Agenda is the Planning Commission report. Mr. Tyndall, I know you're ready, just itching to get to us.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is the Planning Commission report out from our meeting 2 days ago.
For the record, this is item 1, ordinance 142, 2022-23. Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you. This is our case number Z20-2023, application of Singletary Investments, and the agent is Bert Singletary. This is 22.7 acres, and it's currently zoned C5, and it's wishing to go to Planned Unit Development or PUD. It is not an extension of that classification. It's a tract of land east of Pea Ridge Road and Sandbar and Rudding Drive intersections, just south of the 101st. This is in City Council Ward number, it says 11. Don't think that's right. Yeah, it is correct. All right. For a second, I was thinking 10. It's a vacant cleared land, and the proposed land use is described on the preliminary PUD plan and will provide a mixed use between commercial properties to the east and single family properties to the west. That's the applicant's statement. This is Pea Ridge Road looking back towards the 101st. The property is on the right. There's some frontage properties on the left and then 2 subdivisions off the side streets to the left. There's a closer look at the property from one of the side streets, and that's the new Publix shopping center there, which has a driveway both out to Pea Ridge Road and Old Trenton Road. And a little more view to the east, you see the tree line to the far east, which is the border between this and the property on the other side. And then just another view of the field a little farther up from 101st looking back. As a PUD, a reminder to all, I think this is the second or third one you've seen since the code was updated about 1.5 years ago. This is the site plan. This plan has been worked on with the applicant and the Planning Commission staff over several months. This is about a 3 or 4 month process here. There's been a lot of going back to the drawing board to get it to the point where staff said, okay, we feel comfortable that this A, meets the conditions of the ordinance, and B, meets what we want to see in a plan development for this nature. I'll get into the specifics of it in a second. It has 2 key entry points off Pea Ridge Road. It has a future driveway connection, as you can see in the top right corner there, to a future development. It also has a sidewalk connection to the back of the Publix development there as well. Pedestrian walkway around the retention pond in the right side. Though these are all squares on it, the square in the top middle is a open park area, as is a small public area along the building in the middle to the left. And then along Pea Ridge Road is a row of several rows of attached townhouses with garages in the rear. So the front of the building will face Pea Ridge Road. We've got a couple renderings from their architect here as well. There's the first. This would be looking on an oblique from 101st would be on your left. The Publix would be just beyond this to the left behind that building. You'll see there are 2 to 3 story townhouses in the front. The Planning Commission actually worked with the applicant. This originally came in as just parking all the way up to Pea Ridge Road. We felt this townhouses that face Pea Ridge Road were set back a little bit, offers a buffer from the existing houses on Pea Ridge Road. All the widening for this project will be handled on the applicant's side of the property, so no property on the other side will be taken or needed for the widening. They're going to add a lane, basically a turning lane where the current other lane is, and then add another lane next to that. The original plan also had 5-story buildings in the middle and then 5-story buildings in the back. Now what they've done is taken the story off those buildings in the middle, so they're 4 stories, replaced them with the townhouses, so there's no net loss in units to the applicant. It just makes a better transition from 2 to 3 story townhouses, a 4-story building. You won't even see those 5-story buildings behind there from the houses on the street because of the townhouses and maybe the top floor of the 4-story buildings in between. So we felt that offered a nice progression between the commercial area on Old Trenton Road to the houses out there. You can see the 2 green spaces and the pond off to the corner there. That would be looking from across the street on Pea Ridge Road, what the townhouses would look like. They'll have some sidewalk out in front of them that will lead back into the site. It'll be a public sidewalk on that side as well. And as I mentioned, garages in the back. I think sorry, they're big pictures. And there's a closer up view of one of the mixed use buildings with 3 stories of residential on top and a first floor of commercial or retail. And I'll get into those numbers in a moment. As with the PUD, we did go out, we had a pre-application meeting, and then we also got other department comments. First comment from Gas and Water. They said it's okay, however, a known issue relative to the water supply exists in the area. The developer and Clarksville Gas and Water are aware of the matter and will resolve it as part of the development process. It deals with water flow availability in the area. Clarksville Street Department, a traffic assessment was submitted and received, and the following improvements will be required as part of the final PUD application. A 3-lane section along the owner's frontage on Pea Ridge Road, sidewalk along the owner's frontage of Pea Ridge Road, a lane section for their 2 driveways to Pea Ridge Road, and a traffic signal required, funding to be determined. I'll get to that also. No other departments or comments received, and you see the comments of the school system listed for Glen Ellen and Kenwood Middle and High School. As a PUD plan, what you're doing today is you're considering the application here. If this passes, the zone change passes, when they want to develop, they have to come back to the Planning Commission for final PUD plan. At that time, the Planning Commission staff and Planning Commission will send letters out again. We will have a public hearing, and we will make sure that the plan that's submitted matches the concept plan that you have in front of you today. I can't guarantee you the colors are going to be the same or the trees are going to be exactly the same, but the amount of square footage, the general location of the building, the driveways, all that pretty much gets locked in. There's some minor tweaks that can be made at a staff level, but the general intent of the development will be kept throughout the process. If they make major changes, they have to come back to City Council to either unzone this property or correct it for what they want to do. The total amount of units involved in this is 372. I'll give you the breakdown here in a moment. Staff does recommend approval, and if you go to the PUD report, which should be attached to the ordinance, I'll go through some of the other key items. 38 townhouses and 334 apartment units. The breakdown there is 262 bedroom apartments and 74 single bedroom apartments. This comes out to a total density of 16.4 units per acre, so just a slight bit greater than R4 or C2 would permit. It also contains 19,000 square feet of restaurant, 19,000 square feet of retail, 10,750 square feet of office, 6+ acres of usable open space, including walkways and sidewalks. Total parking required would be 916, and they're supplying 948 surface spaces and 38 garage spaces. You can see the intent of the PUD. That's the language directly from the ordinance. And then on the next page, the minimum requirements. This site meets or exceeds all the requirements per the ordinance. It's greater than 1 acre. It has greater than 5 dwelling units per acre density, but less than 40. It does have a mixture of uses, but still retains 80% mix of residential. A traffic impact study was submitted. Discussions with the street department warranted a traffic signal and improvements on Pea Ridge. Improvements will be required at final PUD plan depending on the status of improvements by others in the area. And then existing water, sewer, and system upgrades will be needed. We approved at the Planning Commission last month a subdivision just to the north of this known as the Walker Farm subdivision. They were also required to do the traffic signal at 101st and Pea Ridge Road. What we have here is a situation where with either development that comes in first will have to do the signal. So they are in talks together to potentially partner on doing the signal out there, knowing that we don't want to get in a situation where one is freezing out the other. But we've put the same conditions on both projects so that whoever comes in first will have to take the brunt of doing the signal out there. Both projects are big enough alone that either one will trigger the signal improvements. So we hope that they continue to work together for the progress out there, but they each have the same improvements on Pea Ridge Road and 101st tacked to their projects. This one has the addition of the Pea Ridge Road improvements through its frontage of its property. I think that's about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions about the process or the application. And again, staff and planning commission both recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. So just to clarify more for people that are not familiar, they can only change this, is it 10%? Like once we vote yes on this, the builder has to stay within this plan and they can only alter by 10% or it has to come back to us for a vote. Is that correct? Is that the right number?
Yeah, that's the general gist of it, 10% total amount of units. So if they had to change a building and they lost about 30 units, that would be within tolerance. If they get to 40, that would be over 10%. They would have to come back here. So it's the understanding that as a PUD, you've done a certain amount of engineering, but maybe you haven't done your total geotechnical or some other things out there. And there might be something, maybe you run into a sinkhole. We have to allow for a little tolerance for something like that. But if it majorly changes, again, over that 10%, it would have to come back to city council.
I know this is tough, but I appreciate because you get what you see. Like that's what I was trying to, we're going to get what we see. My other question though is actually coming from the community. And that is, we're widening the road and making the improvements and putting in the sidewalks, but Pea Ridge is now becoming a thoroughfare and I live in that area. I'm guilty of cutting through Pea Ridge these days to get to Publix sometimes. But so how do we address that concern, like the rest of Pea Ridge Road? Like what do we tell the residents that, yeah, we know you're going to get more traffic?
I think we've looked at this more as an extension of the area at 101st Trenton Road. You know, a very key, very busy intersection in the city is starting to build up as a very big commercial center with some car lots, the Publix facility, another future medical facility possible. And as I mentioned, the property just north of this with 5 or 6 more commercial out parcels. So it is a growing area in general, regardless of the PUD. I think the cut through traffic is more likely to come from residents south of here who want to come up to what this might attract versus the residents here cutting down. I don't know if there's much to gain getting down to Old Trenton Road down there as much as getting out to Trenton Road and to 101st where you can get around a lot easier. We did not look further south of Tracy Lane on the impact here. I know Pea Ridge Road does get quite narrow as you get down into that neighborhood south of Tracy Lane, but it is an old farm path that has grown up over time.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a couple of questions. With regards to this being a mixed-use restaurant, retail, and office space, I imagine that will be open to the public, and this isn't like a private, gated community kind of thing?
Correct.
All right, perfect. And then when it comes to that light that you were speaking of, because it is a requirement, let's say this gets approved, what's the process? Are they allowed to start construction and just not occupy until the light, or how does that work with getting that light put in?
It will all have to be timed out together when, again, they'll have to apply to the planning commission, whether it's a month from now, a year from now. Mm-hmm. At some point when they're ready to begin construction, they'll apply for the final PUD plan. And that's where we'll get the more detailed utility plan, drainage plan, the final working details of this. You know, just the setbacks, the sizes of everything, all those numbers that go into a final plan. We'll treat that then as a site plan. The site plan will get a condition that signal needs to be done by X. It could be immediately, it could be by X building being built. The street department will determine what that threshold is, but the signal should be open by the time the first person moves in. And
okay.
that's the applicant is under that understanding as well.
Okay. And then I guess real quick, the last question, because it's not very clear on the pictures that we got. in the background, it looks like there's water. Is that like a retention pond, or is that like some type of outdoor space? What's going on there?
There's currently a low area there,
Okay.
and they're gonna utilize that as their water retention,
Yeah.
so it'll start probably holding a little more water from the runoff of the parking lots and the buildings, and they're gonna build a path around it as a open space area.
Like a mini lake, I guess. All right, thank you.
Lake Marquee. Councilperson McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, a couple questions. One is there a landscape buffer required on any side of this, specifically the property, the residential property to, I guess that's the south?
Or to the right side of this picture, I guess we'll say.
Oh, I'm on the layout, but yes, over there.
Okay. So there is a landscape buffer required, however, there's several hundred feet right there of existing area, so I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be necessarily a strip of trees or something. We'll have to address that at the site plan, final PUD plan process, but a buffer is required between residential properties and higher densities like this. They will get some credit for that distance, though, that they're already set back. That pond is about the distance of that to the next property there.
Okay, and has the street department looked at that? Because I always had been under the impression that was a sinkhole in that area.
It probably is a sinkhole being
Okay.
used as drainage. I mean, it's Clarksville, so every depression
Okay.
is probably a sinkhole. They'll have to address that again. When you have a PUD plan like this, they've already put so many dollars in, but until they get approval, they're probably not gonna go out and start excavating and making sure what is exactly under the ground there.
Okay. And then the last thing is, I apologize if I missed this. Will this development be able to access the public's private road?
So that was some of our issues, and we wish we could require that, but that Publix road is a private road and a private driveway. They are in discussions with them. There is going to be an exit out the back right of this to the general parking of the Publix area, but not specifically that road. It is something we have asked them to work out with Publix. Publix would have to grant them access through their easement, through deed. There's some cost sharing involved, so it's gonna take some time. But we do hope that does happen. Otherwise, you're gonna have two driveways pretty close back and forth right there.
Okay, and then I couldn't really, on the site plan rendering, I couldn't tell if those exits to Pea Ridge line up with Sandbar and Reading Drive, or if they are off alignment.
Yes, they do.
Okay,
And they'll have a right and a left turn out of each of them, so that you're not backing up folks for the rare person who might make a left turn.
okay. Final question, or comment rather. I appreciate the fact that you all had the foresight to get the affected developments together to come to an agreement on the traffic signal. I mean, as you know, that was my concern about a previous zoning in that area, but I agree it wouldn't be fair for one person who's adding additional traffic to that area to be responsible for the full project. So I thank you all and your staff for working that through. Thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, be recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Jeff. I have three questions. The final PUD plan, can we be notified of that? Because I know there's been a previous PUD, and I want to make sure that,
We will treat it just like a site plan, so the neighboring property owners within 100 feet will get a letter, and it will be on our agenda. It does not get assigned for a site plan. I'll be happy to let you know as the council member there that it is on the agenda.
please, thank you. And the next question, the roadways, I know he talked about developing all of that. Is that going to be done prior to any other construction? Is that going to be part of the first phase?
It will have to be done as part of the first phase. It would likely start concurrently, so we don't want them to finish it and then you can start construction. They would both take about the same amount of time, so a smart developer is gonna start the road widening at the same time they start their first building footer, so that they can utilize, the same construction crews possibly. It really depends. There's a lot of moving pieces out here with the other developments in the area, so it really depends, again, chicken and egg, who's first, and at what point, what agreements they've come to together. So both projects are still in their very early phases, and they're continuing to work together.
Because I know even that's gonna be very painful for the residents that are there, because that's gonna tie up a lot of that, with construction and vehicles and things like that. The next question, has the developer, mentioned anything about a connector road, from Pea Ridge to Trenton?
No, and that's, so the road you see on this site plan to the left side of it, or the north, that is the driveway that is owned by the Publix complex, which you can see just to the top of the page there. Just like if you had a driveway next to someone else's driveway, I can't make someone tie into your driveway. Same thing, even though it's commercial, I can't require Publix to make them have access. They are in talks with the owners of that property. As you can imagine, it involves some money, and they're working through that. We have required, though, on the top right of the plan, a driveway out that side of it, as you can see, to a future development that has not been, we've not seen a plan for that project or that property yet. So with this driveway in place, when that comes in, we'll be able to say, they're tying to you, you've got to tie to them. It's a lot easier when they're the first ones in. If this property was the first one in and Publix was coming in, for instance, we may have required Publix to tie their driveway to this, or they may have wanted to. Again, sometimes the first person in sets the tone out there, and that was Publix.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, thank you for such a thorough investigation of this property and how it really looks nice. Have there been any oppositions in this? And if it has been, what is the major opposition of the residents for the development?
There has been opposition. We held, public hearing-wise, we held a public hearing last month, and then the plan changed just a little bit more, so we held another public hearing this month as well. We had the 3 speakers we allow both times 3 speakers spoke. In addition, and it goes on for several pages after, you should have in your packet, and apologize to all the signature blocks that get attached to everything, but there are several letters in opposition behind this, and you can read through them.
What was one of the major concerns?
The 2 concerns are, one, this is commercial, we want it developed as commercial only, and then the 2 was the traffic.
And traffic.
And
Okay.
I'm sure you'll hear from some of those folks
I've
next
already
week.
gotten a lot of calls. So that's why I asked. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We are now ready for item 2, ordinance 14, oh, I'm sorry, you had another question?
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Item 2, ordinance 143. Mr. Tundle, please, sir.
Okay. I gotta get through all those letters. There we are. All right, the next case up is Planning Commission Case Z34, 2023. This is the application of Tanner Properties, GP. Agent is Rosemary Calcese. Currently, this is zoned R1, and they're requesting to go to C4 in the front and C5 in the back. The tract fronts the north frontage of Rossview Road, approximately 1,000 feet west of Rossview Road and Powell Road intersections. This is in City Council Ward number 11. It's a semi-wooded tract that is fairly level. The applicant's statement is, the adjoining landowner will not grant a secondary access, thus R1 is not viable, nor is R4 for proper access and safety. C4 and C5 are requested for a storage and support of retailers. This does have a previous zoning history. Approximately a year ago, they applied, and they applied for, at the time, C2 in the front and R4 in the rear in a very similar fashion. When they discussed that the adjoining landowner, so to the left of this, let's go back to the closer one. To the left, that's the entry to Rossview Middle School. The school system will not grant them access to this, very similar to the previous case we just heard of, and not tying to someone else's driveway. And then to the right, where it says Vintage Way, there's actually a little bit of land separating Vintage Way from this property, and they were not going to grant them that. Vintage Way is also a private easement, not a roadway. It's not a public road, it's a private access easement. So that's what they mean by that. So they will have one driveway, come off Rossview Road, approximately in the middle of the property, and going straight back to access both the back and whatever is built across the front. I would speculate that the front would be more of a strip retail center or two individual buildings, one to each side of the driveway, and then a mini storage center in the rear where it's C5. Here's the property on the newly finished Rossview Road out there. The QT would be to your right. And there you are looking back toward the interstate. So that the property that is, all the trees out there, that is the property in question. And that's looking from the middle school driveway back toward the property. There's no gravity sewer in the area per gas and water. A traffic assessment was required and received and approved by the Clarksville Street Department. No other comments were received. There would be no housing units with this proposal. The staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The request is an extension of the existing C4 interchange district, and C5 is appropriate along Rossview Road, a state road, and arterial road. Exit 8 is an increasing its role as a regional commercial center for the residents of the area. Adequate infrastructure will serve the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified relative to this request. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Tindall, just looking from the top down, I have concerns that we're, like, this isn't our only school, that we are encroaching with commercial next to our schools. And this is a very busy, like, if you try to get out here at 7:30 in the morning and drop, just get to the highway, it's already very busy. And Powell, this whole intersection. I'm surprised that school didn't try to buy this, or was there any kind of conversation about that? I mean, as a school, I know they make comments, but to me,
Well-
this is more than the normal comment.
Ironically, last year when this was heard the first time and it was apartments, the school system pushed back pretty hard against, which they don't typically push back on the use, just the amount of students it might add. This time there was no pushback, and they actually provided the amount of students in capacity, but this isn't going to bring any additional students. What we can say, and this was a difficult one for staff because we actually supported last year as well, which was C5 in the front and R4 in the back. The property to the west of this that looks like it's R1 is school system property. So there's no more developable property on the north side of Rossview Road until you get past, is that Cardinal Lane? Yeah, Cardinal Lane. And honestly, just past that is houses. So this really is the last commercial property you'll have on that side of the road, just due to the fact that it's publicly owned just beyond that. You got to consider the uses that are in C5. They've indicated it's going to be self-storage. That's a pretty benign use, honestly, against the school system, but, C5 can be additional things as well. Traffic is what it is out there. It is continually getting better with the improvements that are going on, and then when phase 2 of Dunbar and Rossview gets done, I think it'll operate even better.
All right, thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jeff, thank you for that. I think this will actually be pretty good, considering there are no units that's going to be built on this property, just storage. So I'm all in favor of this.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually am in agreement with my fellow council member that in regard to what is the planned usage, I understand that we are picking at zoning based on what they're telling us, but I thought the same thing. I had the concerns of the very heavy traffic that you would have from the R4 a year ago and was absolutely against that zoning. But this zoning, like you said, is a much less zoning. I do hate that there is not a way that they can connect to that other road. And I understand there's no way we can force them, but I wish there was some way we could do that to, kind of help with the traffic flow there a little bit.
Mr. Tindall, there's a single-family red brick house that sits, is that on this property or just adjacent to it?
I don't believe it's this property. It might be.
Ms. Mosley, a retired
That's on the
educator
other
who's no
side of the
longer on there?
driveway there.
It's next to it?
That's the other side of the school driveway.
Okay. Will they be required to buffer between that and her house?
They would,
If-
Probably not, because the school driveway would be in between. But that's
Okay.
something the planning commission could consider as an additional requirement when the site plan, we'll see what the site plan looks like when it
Okay.
comes in.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're ready for item 3, ordinance 144. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
Okay, next item up is Planning Commission Case Z35, 2023, application of Ava Homes. This is .42 acres in an area you've seen some other zonings recently. Currently zoned R2 and requesting to go to R6. It is an extension of R6. The same applicant has zoned the properties to both the left and the right of this over the past year, and they were able to acquire the middle property, so now they'll be able to develop the entire block face there of Caldwell Lane. This is in Council Ward number 7. It's a single-family home site currently, and the applicant's statement is to provide for single-family development and extend the surrounding zoning. There's the home that's currently there on Caldwell Lane. And across the street is the Maddox Circle Apartments. And looking a little further up, the adjoining home next to that home. There were comments received from other departments, and the only one from the street department was sidewalk will be required per the R6 classification, and the school system comments of their capacities for Norman Smith Elementary, Montgomery Middle, and High School. Historical estimates would put this at 4 units. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R6 is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern and is an extension of R6 to both the east and the west. Adequate infrastructure will serve the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified relative to this request. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Channel, can you go back to the picture that shows the cars, like on the street, right? So if you drive past that area at 4:30, both sides of that street are parked. So there's no parking for these apartments. There's only street parking for these apartments on the Maddox Circle. Do you know if as a community we're working, I mean, because otherwise, I mean, even if these units put parking in the front or in the back, they're still going to be parking on this road and it's going to be an issue. Like, are we addressing that as a community? Like, how to fix that before it happens? Do you know?
That's not in my wheelhouse.
It's the Clarksville Housing Authority property that doesn't have parking for their residents.
Or enough parking. I do believe there is parking internally, but it does
Not
not appear
much.
that it's adequate.
It's right there off of Edmondson Ferry.
Right, and it's not this row, right? It's not even.
It's
I
not
drove
Caldwell
in and
Lane.
around. It's not accessible, like for the easy access for this row of apartments.
That's
Because
why, yeah, I bring this up so you can see the cul-de-sac that goes in. That's part of it, but there's likely not enough parking internally to serve all the units.
So, have we reached out? I mean, they have their own funding to do the parking. Is that how that works, Mayor?
Yeah, they're independent authority. All we do is appoint their board members and they get federal money to do their thing.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're
Thank you,
recognized.
Mayor. Mr. Tender, do you know if they will build garages, to these, homes?
I can't say if they'll
For
build
parking?
garages, but they will have parking driveways or
Driveways.
areas for at least 2 cars per.
So that we'll take the
Off
cars
street.
off the road, you know, on that side?
On that side of the road, yes.
Yeah. Okay, but there is no parking over there for the, in that area, in Ward 7, in that housing area, except on the street in front of those apartments.
Same way on Richardson Lane.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tindall, we're ready for item 4, ordinance 145, please, sir.
This is application Z36.
or do we need help? Phone a friend. All right, Mr. Tindall, we're ready.
That was pretty quick. All right, the next application is Z36. I'll get back to where we were. Application of Brian Johnson. This is a 4.0 acre site currently zoned C2 and requesting to go to C5. It is 2 parcels. It is not an extension of C5 in the Dover crossing area. That whole area is C2 currently. The property fronts Dover Road, approximately 375 feet east of Stephanie Drive, and it also fronts Stephanie Drive, approximately 885 feet north of Dover Road. It's in Council Ward number 2. It is 2 irregularly shaped parcels, one which was previously used to sell mulch and stone. The applicant's statement is for a proposed self-storage facility that is no longer allowed in C2 under the current zoning regulations, and that goes back to 2010. When self-storage was not allowed in C2 anymore. Here it is off Dover Road next to the gas station there, and the substation is on the other side there. The site is currently cleared. And that's looking from Dover Road back towards Stephanie Drive. And then we have, I think, one more picture from Stephanie Drive. The site would be on the right. The city street department said the driveway here would be less likely. The terrain is pretty steep on this side. The access likely would be off Dover Highway out there. We'll have to see a site plan, how they lay it out. It does get pretty narrow back there, but they obviously want to access the rear of that lot for their stated use. No comments or concerns received from other departments. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. C5 highway and arterial zoning is located along an arterial highway in close proximity to a signalized intersection, and adequate infrastructure serves the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that is a very odd shaped cutout. Did you say there's not enough property to access Stephanie Drive?
Not the property, but the slope to get down to the property there
Okay.
would be pretty steep.
So there would not be access to
I
Stephanie Drive?
can't say there would not, but the topography makes it pretty much not.
Okay. So we're seeing a growing trend with storage facilities. There's one not too far down the road on Dover Road from this that's pretty new. And I apologize for not having looked this up. What else can go in a C5 besides a storage unit? I know that's the most robust of the commercial zonings.
C5 is our widest with the most uses in it, commercial zoning district. Some of the more unique things, car sales, car repair, hotels, restaurants, bars, and all the other typical retail that goes along with that. Bigger box stores.
Okay. I was just curious because, right, that big C2 directly behind that is the Kroger Shopping Center. And I understand the R4 right there, just so my colleagues know, that's mostly investment rental property, but I still have concerns. There are single-family homes just up from where that parcel hits Stephanie Drive. And as most people know, it's one of those roads that people like to use to cut from Dover Road to Lafayette Road. Like we all have those roads in our ward. So my concern is about the access of Stephanie Drive. All right. Is it, one more question. Is the person that's proposing to develop out this property for their use, is it a local owner or is that out of town?
I believe it is the property owner, but I can track that down for you a little more. The applicant is Brian Johnson,
Okay.
as stated.
Googling Johnson, though, will probably find a lot of matches.
We can look up the property card and see what that is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? We're now ready for item 5, ordinance 147. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
Okay, this is a zoning code change ordinance, so no land involved here. This is one that was deferred last month at the Planning Commission for a little additional study. This ordinance modifies both the R2D and the R3 zoning classifications. This really arose out of the Red River Neighborhood Plan and some of the issues raised in there. Currently, R3 zone, which is typically downtown, Crossland Avenue area, New Providence area, that's the majority of it. There's about 3,100 parcels citywide that are zoned R3, but they're majority in the older core of the town. Right now, R3 allows a triplex only, and you can do a single family or a duplex as a conditional use if they're a lot of record and they meet certain minimum sizes and lot size, not width, but just lot size. So what the staff has worked with the Building and Code Department on is to come up with some changes to R3 that will be effective citywide to really, in essence, roll this back to 2010 before the city council had amended this zoning ordinance at the time, which R3 previously allowed single families, duplexes, and triplexes based on the size of your lot. And we're going back to allowing single family is the by right use now if this gets passed, with duplexes and triplexes being allowed, but only if you have 65 feet or greater and 10,000 square feet for a duplex, or 80 feet and 12,000 square feet for a triplex. Again, those are the old 2010 numbers that were involved back then. What happened in the 2010 rewrite is that the lot size was left in the code, but the lot width was pulled out of the conditions. Now, we don't know if that was done on purpose or that was just inadvertently left out, and it just said that you could do it if it was a legal lot of record. Well, over time, in speaking with the code director, current code director, previous code directors have, the interpretation of that lot of record has changed over time, and we believe it has changed to a point where that just means any lot that's 50 feet wide. And that's not exactly what lot of record means. A legal lot of record means it was legal to do what you wanted to do at the time of 2010. So we believe, both the Code Department and the Planning Commission believe that putting back this section about the lot width for 65 and 80 feet really takes out any gray area that was not being interpreted properly, and now there's no question for someone who wants to develop a piece of R3 property. It also makes developers who want to develop single-family units on R3, makes it a lot easier. It would also cut down on the amount of R6 applications because we're going to allow them to be divided up to 30 feet, not 25 feet like R6, but 30 feet, which would allow for a 20-foot big house instead of a 15-foot wide house, and we think that would be advantageous for folks who have these properties. Instead of going through a 3-month rezoning process, you'll come in, you can minor plat your property into 2 or 3 lots depending on its size and build single family homes, whereas right now you might be inclined to try to build the duplex. And we think we would encourage the smaller single family startup housing as a better option there. So while doing that, we also looked at the R2D, which almost no one uses anymore. There's very little R2D in the city. But R2D right now is a 75-foot wide lot. You can only build a duplex in R2D. And we are proposing as sort of a balancing with this is to reduce that to 50 feet. That would allow a developer to request, like they do with R6, to build a duplex on a 50-foot lot. But it would have to come to city council and be debated and be approved if they were to move forward building a duplex. So there's still an opportunity there, but it requires it to come here in the legislative body to approve it. And that final bullet, I think I covered that already, is that it should increase the speed and efficiency of getting single-family units instead of going through an R6 rezoning. This chart here really shows you the key changes. On the left is the current bulk regulations, as we call them, for those lots. So currently for a triplex, again, I mentioned 80 feet and 12,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, and a lot of record, which again, it was interpreted down to being 50 feet, and a single-family lot being at least 10,000 square feet or less, and a lot of record. We are proposing on the right for R3 that the lot size still stay 12,000 square feet for the triplex and 80 feet wide, but it's now just a conditional use. So that's what it currently is. And then the duplex would be 10,000 square feet and 60 foot wide, also as a conditional use. That rolls it back to where it was at 2010, and reducing the single family square footage to 3,500 square feet and 30 feet wide, which would be 30 by 125. And that would be a use by right in the R3 zone. R2D, as you can see there, reducing it by 2,000 square feet and from 75 to 50 feet. I don't think there's any undeveloped R2D in the city. I may be mistaken that there's a couple lots, but most R2D has been developed at this point in the city. It's a very technical ordinance. It really tries to get out of the heart of what's been going on over the last several almost a decade since 2010 of the changing of the interpretation there of the lot of record, and just add some more clarification for that, while also allowing these lots to develop in the manner which they have been recently, more like R6 and not with triplexes. Is this going to address every lot that's capable of holding a triplex and make it a single family lot? No. There are several lots citywide, probably several dozen, that still could effectively hold a triplex. But what it does, it allows property owners to now divide their property, whereas currently today, if you divide an R3 lot, even if you move the lot line 5 feet, you've got to meet that triplex designation of 12,000 square feet. So if you and your neighbor are both single-family lots and you just want to move the lot line a little bit so they can have a little more land or build a shed or something, you can't do that. And the Planning Commission believes that that's not really proper, considering that the majority of R3 lots are still single-family houses that were built prior to 2010. So we, Planning Commission and staff both recommend approval of this, and we do have the support of the Code Department who's worked on this with us. I'll be happy to answer any questions on this.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, on table 4.3, the side setbacks between these dwellings, it's 5 feet, a total of 5 feet. So if I'm understanding this correctly, that's not 5 feet per dwelling, that's just 5 feet inclusive, right, of two dwellings?
5 to each side.
Five
So
each
it's a
side,
total
so
of
it's
10
10?
feet.
Okay,
And then the lot next to you would be 5 feet as well, so it's a minimum of 10 feet between the buildings.
okay, all right, thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, would you email us this Cliff Notes version of your ordinance, please?
The slides?
Yes,
Sure.
please, thank you. Or the Jeff Notes version, sorry.
I see what you did there. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me after the Regional Planning Commission meeting the other day and alleviating my concerns. I also want to say that I spoke with Mr. Smith at Building and Codes, and he too alleviated any concerns I have. So thank you for the work you've put into this, and especially taking the information from the Red River Plan, their study that was done, and to help really craft what was needed here. And I just wanted to take that moment to say how much I appreciated it from you and Mr. Smith.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd also like to say thank you for sitting down with me today and addressing some of my well, not necessarily concerns, but some of the opportunities that I'm seeking. And we talked about this, and so I wanted to go over a couple. And the first one is the setback. I'd like to talk about the setback. And this is where your handouts come out, if you look at the pictures here. If you look at the image here of these are R4 apartments, I know that this isn't part of the zoning, but this is in one of our legacy neighborhoods, and you can see on this image that something doesn't match along the way of everybody else. And I'm just concerned that the language in 4.1.1 is not how do I say, strong enough to prevent that in the future. And I added an example of, the maximum front setback should be equal to the distance from the street of the predominant current setback of the majority of the existing houses in the block where the new construction is taking place. The purpose of the maximum setback requirement is to protect the existing houses and property owners from radical deviations in the setbacks that destroy the rhythm of the existing neighborhood. I'd like to make an amendment, not change any of your wording, but maybe just add a sentence like that. Do you think that would cause that have to have this ordinance go back to the department? Because I don't want to change your language. I just wanted to add a sentence.
I think any deviation from this amendment would require it to go back, would it not, Mr. Tyndall?
Eric Bittner and I spoke before this meeting. We would want to get, probably, I know Lance is out, but get his take on what is a material change. If it's just a clarifying sentence, probably not, but we would have to get some clarification before next week to see what that is.
And we will, but I'm just a little hesitant to make much change because there's a lot of sensitivity to this.
I understand.
Not just
Me
for the
too.
Red River neighborhood, but just citywide. I'm not diminishing what the council member's talking about. I just want to make sure we don't put something in there and people say, well, I didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Eric and I said we'll package up any questions tonight and
Great.
get some answers.
Okay, Councilperson Reynolds, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so that's fine. So I did email this to you, Mr. Tyndall, so you could have a copy of this. I do feel that as you go through some of our legacy neighborhoods, we are not respecting the setbacks, so that is a concern. And I would, this is an opportunity, we're changing it, and we've already addressed it, so I'd just like to clarify. The next page is trees. I know it'd be surprised. Let's talk about trees. So we met, and this is kind of just going over what we discussed. I would like eventually to require a tree placed in every yard when we build it, depending on the property. It is, if you look at 5 different cities, if you look at Chattanooga, Nashville, Germantown, Alcoa, and Knox County, they all, in their ordinance, require a certain type of tree, and they require a 2-inch trunk as they're putting it in. I gave the example of Germantown. We talked about this, not adding it in today, but I do plan to come forward with I know that overall we're working, as you and I discussed, we are working on a comprehensive plan, but that's probably 2 years out, and there's going to be a lot of building before that happens. So I will come back with you about that. Do you have a comment about that? A follow-up from our conversation earlier.
I don't have a comment on that right now. Comprehensive plan, we met with them today. Hopefully adopted before the end of the year by the time we get through all the readings. So maybe not 2 years out, but a little longer before we get an ordinance in front of you.
Right.
regarding
I mean,
that.
I'm talking not necessarily the plan, but the ordinances to support the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is we talked about sidewalks. So as I was studying the the changes, and I went back and I was comparing the charts from A to B, I noticed, and this is the current, this page right here is the current sidewalk chart in our ordinance. And if you look at the highlighted one on the right where it says R6 with comment 6, and then you come down here and it says sidewalks along street frontage. There are many places in our ordinances that require sidewalks. If you go to the back page, these images are pretty new images. The first one is, again, in my area, Peterson Lane and Old Trenton Road. This road has been built up probably in the last 10 or 15 years since I lived there. If we had followed our rules and enforced them, we would have had a connected sidewalk along Peterson Lane by now. Or there would have been very minimal gaps. One end is a college, the other end is housing and a bus stop. People are walking on this road as we infill, and I saw this, I was actually going to ask for an amendment to require that we do the note on R3 and R2D and embed number 6 as part of that ordinance. I'm going to continue that conversation. And again, like on Bell Road, And need more, I talk about this all the time. We recently approved a variance that does not require an apartment of 240 units, 0.7 miles from a school, to put in a sidewalk. So I do think that we have an issue where we have ordinances all over the place that say sidewalks, but either we're not enforcing them or they're not congruent enough that we're not following them. And so I think it's time that we as organizations start closing some of the loopholes and making it clear that sidewalks are required. And I'd like to know what the rest of the council feels about that.
Councilperson Smith, you are recognized. That was a question. Are you prepared to answer that? Okay.
Nope.
Anybody want to answer? Nobody? Counselor?
Okay.
Be against all of it that you just mentioned. All of it, from the trees and everything.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment? Okay.
All right.
Council-
So I will follow up. Our residents, whether we're against it or not, our residents clearly indicate that they want a city that's walkable. If you're looking at the health and you work with Mr. Joy Smith, we are one of the unhealthiest states in the nation, and part of it is because we don't have an ability to walk out our door and walk to a park or get outside. So we have really a moral obligation to improve the health of our community, and it starts with walkability.
Okay, Councilperson Smith, you are recognized, and then Councilperson Red.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Tender, and thank you for meeting with me today, helping me to better understand this comprehensive zone change for all of the areas of, for R3. My concern is this, under, and we discussed this, 3.39 R3, the moderate density residential district. That first paragraph, that the R3 moderate density residential districts intend to provide for residential areas of moderate density from small lot single families to 2-family and 3-family houses on individual lot. I would like for a period to be added there. That's the only amendment I would be making there. And then also under the under section 5.17 residential uses permitted with conditions. The 2-family and 3-family in R3 and R4 make the minimum lot size number 3 width in R3 for 2 and 3-family dwellings shall be the following. I would just like to change that to 70 feet at the building setback line for 2 family dwellings. And that's it. And then I will have something for you at the regular session also. Thank you.
Okay, Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I would be against everything that the previous speaker said, including the sidewalks and mandating things. This should be left up to the marketplace. As far as Tennessee being one of the most unhealthiest places to live, I'm not sure where the source is on that, but according to Forbes magazine, Tennessee is having a great influx of people from all over the other states. Many of them, maybe they might be a little more healthier, but certainly if you live in Chicago and places like that, so many of them are dying from being shot. They didn't get a chance to become unhealthy. Thank you.
All right, any other questions about ordinance 147? Say, Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
I would just like to say something in response to the previous speaker. Sidewalks are needed, and it is mandatory in the R3 zone that they are mandatory to be put in. As we know that many of the residential new homes that have been built over there, no sidewalks have been laid out in that area. Every home that has been built in that area, there has been no sidewalks built, and we are aware of that. So I think we need sidewalks. We're getting ready to restore, rebuild, and refurbish Frost Des Moines. And so I'm sure there would be a good area for sidewalks where people would be walking to there to utilize that building. I think sidewalks are much needed in that area. There are children over there to catch the bus to school. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment or question about this ordinance? Anything else, Mr. Tindall?
That concludes our report.
All right. Let's get on with item 2, consent agenda. This would be a good time for a restroom break if you want to do that. All right, Madam Clerk, read and read fast, please, ma'am.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 106, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance amending the official code of the city of Clarksville, apportioning the city of Clarksville for the purpose of electing persons for the office of city council member for recently annexed territories. Ordinance 114, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Jeff Burkhart Custom Properties Incorporated to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 115, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from MVM Properties to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 116, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Griffey Family Partnership to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 117, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Matt H. Rudolph Jr., Credit Shelter Trust B, to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 118, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from J&N Enterprises to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 119, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Sango Ridge to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 120, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Todd Morris Construction to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 121, 2022-23, second reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Main Street Investments to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 123, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain utility easements necessary for gas distribution improvements associated with the High Point Road gas main project replacement. Ordinance 124, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain utility easements necessary for gas distribution improvements associated with the McAdoo Creek Road Regulator Replacement Project. Ordinance 125, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain easements and right-of-way to cross property necessary to construct, operate, own, and maintain the Corporate Parkway Boulevard Extension and associated utilities. Ordinance 127, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Dunlop Regional Holdings and Regional Holdings Richard Garrett agent for zone change on property located at the intersection of Needmore Road and Centerstone Circle from AG Agricultural District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Ordinance 128, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of J&N Enterprises for zone change on property located on a portion of a tract south of I-24, north of Tinytown Road, east of Torrington Lane, west of the western terminus of Siegel Drive, from R2 Single Family Residential District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Ordinance 129, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Hunter Wynn for zone change on property fronting on the south frontage of Memorial Drive from R3 Three Family Residential District to C2 General Commercial District. Ordinance 130, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rolanda Amos, Richard Garrett agent, for zone change on a parcel located at the southwest corner of the Woodard Street and Gracie Avenue intersection from R3 Three Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 131, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Elliot Kershaw and Rolanda Amos, Richard Garrett, agent, for zone change on a parcel located at the southwest corner of the Woodard Street and Central Avenue intersection from R3, 3-family residential district, to R6, single-family residential district. Ordinance 132, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Jimmy Terry for zone change on 2 parcels located at the southwest corner of Crossland Avenue and Gracie Avenue intersection from R3, 3-family residential district, to C2, general commercial district. Ordinance 133, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance amending the city's zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville as it pertains to the downtown urban design overlay district. Resolution 69, 2022-23, a resolution approving appointments to the Clarksville Arts and Heritage Council, and the adoption of minutes from June 1st, June 6th, June 15th, and June 20th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good job, Mike. And a round of applause for our clerk and for Mike, our interpreter. All right, anybody wish to be recognized on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready to move into committee reports. Finance Committee Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 61, 2022, 23, postponed 6/1, 23, a resolution authorizing a request from Neighborhood and Community Services to amend its fiscal year 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan. Both the Finance and Neighborhood and Community Services Committee recommended approval. And if you recall, the only reason we postponed this last month was because we had to have a certain amount of time for a public hearing on this.
Okay, any comment or question regarding this resolution? Seeing none, you're recognized.
Ordinance 141, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance to amend the official code of the city of Clarksville pertaining to purchasing and adopting the Tennessee Department of Transportation approved local version of the TDOT consultant selection policy for state or federally funded construction and improvement projects. Finance Committee recommended approval of this. It's exactly as what you see there. It's just the city adopting TDOT's regulations and for state and federally funded projects, and our street department is already doing that.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? You're recognized.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Gas and Water Committee, Councilperson Chairperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Neighborhood and Community Services Committee Chairperson Shekina, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I will have a full report next week.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee Chairperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee Chairperson Red, you're recognized.
I'll have a report next week, including our police department receiving an award of excellence in police services, and I'll have more to say about that next week as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We are ready for Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
I report on July the 6th.
Okay, thank you. And now, under new business, or great minds think alike, we have an ordinance. Oh, you're recognized? Okay. Now, ready for new business, ordinance 146, 2022-23, an ordinance amending the official code of the city of Clarksville, Title III Animals, Chapter 1, Animal Control, Section 3-109, keeping of cattle, horses, sheep, goats, swine, or poultry in residential areas relative to keeping chickens or hens. We have two sponsors of that, Councilpersons Holloman and Zacharias. We'll call you in order. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. How do chickens leave the highway? They take the exit. That's we got a
He'll be here all
jokes up
week.
here. So what my amendment does is it pretty much changes the amount of chickens you can have from 6 to 8. Everything else remains the same. The amount of square feet per bird, the size of the enclosure is per bird as well. So it would just adjust accordingly. So it's just changing it from 6 chickens to 8.
All right, Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So I originally, or this was brought to my attention by a resident of Ward 1 who found out that while the land that they were living on does permit chickens within city limits. It is zoned appropriately. They were not eligible to apply for a chicken permit because they were not the owners of the property. The owners in this case are aware that they keep chickens on the property, which, I mean, it really raised the question to me, is this something that we should restrict to landowners if they are amenable to having chickens kept on their property by their tenants? So I spoke with Mr. Smith from Codes. Mr. Baker drafted the ordinance, and I am proposing that renters be allowed to keep chickens in accordance with all of the other statutory requirements, as long as it comes with the consent and acknowledgement of the property owner.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's not so much as a question. For one, I want to commend both of you for working on this to be able to make changes as needed for the benefit of the residents of our community. I just want to clarify for the public that this still does not allow roosters, which are, of course, very disruptive to neighborhoods. So I just wanted to put that out there for everyone else. But otherwise, I take no issue whatsoever with this. So thank you for your work.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I do, would it be proper to call Mr. Smith forward?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Hi. Okay, so, on average, how many permits do you think you all get for, new chicken structures?
I can have that for you, but it's not more than a couple a week max.
Okay, and then, one concern is the high turnover of rental property. If this passes, would you all keep like a list of property owners who have approved rental tenants, or how would that be? How would you prevent the work to continue to cycle around every time a resident from a rental property moves out? They wouldn't necessarily be able to inherit the coop that's there without, I'm just wondering how that would work.
Without a coup? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think the amendment might address that. It speaks to different property owners, and if it doesn't, it can certainly be added that permission be unique to each tenant. I think that's a pretty simple change.
Does that add a lot of work to you? Would it be easier to just have a list of property owners that say it's okay for my tenants, or?
I think the property owner might want to be involved with it specifically. But yeah, I think one of the options was a lease that they would sign that would grant them that. And then, of course, a lot is left to the latitude of the department to determine which document or credential needs to be submitted for approval, identifying permission.
All right, thank you.
Any more comment or question for Mr. Smith? Council, hang on, Mr. Smith. Councilperson Smith has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is allowing residents, if they rent properties, Airbnbs, they can have these animals. Wait a minute, help me.
Not short-term rentals. This would just be tenants of property. So
Oh, okay.
right now, it's restricted to landowners only, but if you rented a home and had a year lease on the property with the property owner's permission, you could keep chickens on the property as well.
Chickens and other animals as well, swines and all of them too?
No,
Oh,
I think
okay.
there's some exceptions for pot-bellied pigs and that sort of thing, but no other agriculture.
Just chickens
And certainly no goats.
and no horses and no sheep?
No, the cattle, everything's addressed in some of those preceding sentences.
So mainly chickens, right?
Yeah, there's a tremendous demand for hens, it would
Oh,
seem.
okay. Well, we need our eggs.
We do. The prices went up.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Smith, which came first, chicken or the egg?
I'm going to defer to Councilperson Holloman.
Okay,
I do not have an answer for that.
all right, no comment. All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Councilperson Zacharias or Holloman, y'all want to offer anything else?
Yeah, I will just say that the chicken permit is tied to the resident or the person who applied for it, not the property. So once they, like, if a tenant moves out, it's not like that property still gets to, it's not a safe zone for chickens at that point. Trying my best to keep a straight face while we talk about this, but.
Okay, Councilperson Smith, you have a question?
Thank you, for the previous speaker. So if they rent a house, okay, and they, the property owner has to authorize this, or they can just do this on their own as the renter?
No, the property owner does have to authorize it,
Okay,
yes.
all right, thank you.
I like my chicken fried. All right, any other comment or question regarding the chicken ordinance? We are now ready for mayor and council member comments. Anyone have a comment? Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, we have 4th of July coming up next week. So I want to remind everybody to please be safe as far as whether you're driving on the roads, when you're trying to have a good time with your family and friends, but also be safe in utilizing of fireworks. And if you want to be really safe and not risk injury to yourself, your friends, your family, or your property, then please come out and join us on July 3rd at Liberty Park and enjoy the great fireworks show that we'll be having there. And you can also enjoy a second fireworks show out at Fort Campbell on July 4th. So just want to encourage everybody to have a fun holiday, but please be sure to have a safe holiday as well.
Thank you, Councilperson McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Now that we're through the budget, thank goodness, do you know or have an idea when we might have the learning session about home rule charter?
Mr. Jekyll is going to be reaching out to me in August to set that date. He needed to get through the summer.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then my next town hall meeting is next Wednesday, July 5th, 5:30 PM at 211 Cunningham Lane, which is the District 1 Police Precinct. All are welcome. You don't have to live in Ward 2. Thank you.
Okay, so noted. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
In reference to July the 4th celebration, we know it'll be on July the 3rd here in Clarksville, both days really. We want to thank, I think it's Captain Rios at the fire department for putting out the regulations on what you can do with fireworks and what you can't do. Please don't throw fireworks at other cars and people. This is something we need to be reminded about because we remember that a house got burned up because fireworks were thrown into that house. Thank you.
Great point. All right, I've got three items here. One is, as you know, Will Wyatt, our Human Resources Director, is leaving city government and going into the private sector. And I'm pleased to announce and recognize Tessa Luntz in the audience. Tessa, if you don't mind standing, she is the current deputy, will be the interim HR director. So Tessa, welcome. Thank you for being willing to do that. I told her she'd have to sing her school fight song, so stay tuned for that. Thank you to the council members for completing your Title VI training, and special thanks to Eric Bittner for pinch hitting in the absence of our legal department. Eric, thank you for your many, many comments tonight. We appreciate that. All right. Okay, we're now ready for public comments. Any member of the public wish to address the council? Okay, sir. You know the drill? Yes. If you would, approach, give us your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
I'm David Colback. I spoke at the last meeting. I live at Regency Park Apartments. I expected to hear something about the handicap parking problem at this meeting, but I haven't. That's all I wanted to talk about, other than there was discussion at the last meeting about vandalism, using sidewalk chalk. I would think we shouldn't outlaw sidewalk chalk. We got artists who can make some really good pictures, and the rain washes them away. That's the last I have to say. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Colback. Any other member of the public wish to address the council? Seeing none, we're adjourned until next week. Have a safe and happy 4th of July. Happy birthday, America.